Hi everyone, this is a program to showcase the lists and using them. Uh, we want to process quiz scores. First, we're going to ask a person to enter their quiz scores, then drop the lowest score. After that, compute the average without the lowest, and finally print the average and quiz scores without the lowest. Now, of course, in different classes or for different people, there may be different number of quiz scores. In any case, we would want to drop the lowest. Second thing that you want to notice here is that I ask about the quiz scores over here, then I process them, and after that, I'm going to print them back. So I need to store those scores and manipulate that data structure over here to drop and then to compute the average out of it. So naturally, lists come into play. So I'm going to create a list from the quiz scores of the quiz scores that the user will enter. Then I'm going to drop the lowest score from this list. Then I'm going to compute the average of this list. And finally, I'm going to print out all the data that I got. This is sort of a very processed story problem. And essentially, A, B, C, D is what I'm going to do. So those are separate tasks that should be separate functions. And one function should make them all work. That is the main. So if you want to try to do it yourself, go ahead and do it. And I'll begin showing you the design of this program. I decided to use a top-down approach. So I'm going to write my main where I'm going to create the functions that I need and the data structures that I need. So this is the main logic of my program. Student scores will be a list returned by a function that I need to write, enter scores. And here is the corresponding line of code. So student scores equal to enter scores. Next thing, I should take student scores and drop the lowest. And I don't have to output here student scores. Notice how this function will be written. I don't have to return student scores corrected for the lowest score. Then I compute the average, so there will be a function av for average, and it will take student scores, the same list after dropping the lowest score, and compute the average. And finally, I want to print data, and there will be some function to print data. So this is how I modularized my program. May or may not be the best way to do it. Feel free to do things differently. And I continue my top-down approach by creating the missing functions. Here is my enter scores function. It doesn't take any arguments. It is creating an empty list. And after that, this is a process of asking the person to enter their scores. And in the end, this function will return the list. How do I know I need to do the return? Because student scores is going to be defined as a result of this function, as what this function returns. So when I wrote this line of code, I already decided that I'm going to return a list, and that list will be student scores. Notice that this function does not necessarily have to do with quiz scores, it's just entering integer list values. Well, first of all, I'm asking for the first score. I'm assuming that there is at least one score, otherwise the person would not run that program. Feel free to design it differently. And while the score is not -1, I'm doing l.append score. So I'm appending to my list the score, the current score, and then I'm asking for the next score. And I'm using -1 as a sentinel. So there is some assumption here, which is the quiz score is never -1. And of course, I could be more careful here and create a more stable version of the program here. Think what could go wrong. In any case, let's do a little bit of testing. Well, Python ran through my program, did not find any syntactical errors, but it did not execute anything because I did not call any functions anywhere. So maybe let me do it here. Enter scores. So I am debugging now. I cannot debug the main just yet because it depends on the functions I did not write, but I can debug enter scores. Enter your first quiz score 3, 4, 5, and then -1 to finish. So 3, 4, 5 are my scores. They are returned by the function. That's why you can see them here. That's why you printed them. If you comment out this return L, you won't be able to see the result, and you will not be able to use it later. Now on to the next score. So next task, drop the lowest score. What you want to do, you want to find a minimum on the list, and then you want to remove that value. And again, this part is just technical. It doesn't have to do anything with scores. You have a list of integer values or some float values, and you want to remove the lowest value or a lowest value in case the scores repeat. All right. A will be a lowest value. In a list, there can be many lowest values, such as a list consisting of 2's only, and from L, I want to remove A. And I'm using a method here, so this method will be called on the argument of the function. I don't have to return the new list without the lowest score, back, because the method will work directly with this object, with the list object. So that is why in my main, I don't have student score equals to drop lowest student scores. So I don't have to return in this function, anything in this function. And like I did previously, I can very much run and test my program. How do I do that? Using the console, drop lowest. Would be beneficial to have correct spelling here. And for list, I will choose 2, 1, and 3, just to see what it does. Unfortunately, you cannot see it. So for a quick, like rudimentary debugging, you can just print the result. So let me rerun. And then copy paste that. So often for good debugging, you can just print for like simple code, you can just print the results and see what it does. Okay, as expected, the lowest value was dropped, and this is probably good code. Now, what was my next task? Compute an average. So compute an average is honestly one line anyway. I did not have to create a function for that. Ave would be my function, but I decided to, and I'm passing my student scores, from which the lowest was already dropped, the list, into this function. So my function takes a list and computes the average of the scores in this list. Okay, just to recap, function takes a list and produces one number. Here is the function. Return sum of elements on the list divided by the length of the list, and that's the average, sum of all numbers divided by how many numbers they are, and that is the length of the list. So very easy function. Maybe it didn't have to be a function, but I decided to make it one. And finally, print data. So I'm writing another function here, print data. According to my main, print data should not return anything. It just takes average score, it takes student scores, and it prints everything out. So here is my single print statement. Your average is average of your scores, lowest dropped, and L. And as usual, you can quickly debug it. Just run the print data, enter a number for average and some list. They don't have to be related actually, just to see that it works as intended, and indeed it does. So time to go back to my main and make sure that my main works. If you just want to call main from your code, that's completely fine. Do it after those functions. So let me run the main. Enter your first quiz score 2, 1, and 3, and maybe 1 again. So -1 to finish. So 2, 3, 1, somewhere I'm printing out the result of my function. That's probably for debugging. Your average is 2 of your scores lowest dropped. So I dropped one of the ones. I had scores 1, 3, 1, 1, 3, 1, and before that 2. I removed one of the ones, and the average is now 2. So it seems to do what I intended it to do. There is a print statement somewhere that I need to remove. Here it is. And maybe you want to improve on your printing statement. See, since the program is modularized, you can see exactly when you need to do it. And so we are printing data here. I want to print all scores on the next line. Sorry, close the parentheses, the apostrophe print. And actually I can do it in a loop. For score in L, I'm going to print it. Print score, comma, actual symbol of a comma, and then I want to print them on the same line. So end will be equal to nothing. Okay, so with any luck, this works better. Enter your quiz score 2, 3, 4, 2 would be my quiz scores, and your average is 3, 0 of your scores 3, 4, and 2. I have an extra comma here, and overall I can do so that we don't get that in the last position, and also remove the space over here. But that is minor improvements, everything works, and that was my example for you.